Hey Chris, how are you?
Yes, sir. I'm great.
You're great.
Are you checking my microphone?
I am. Are you excited for today, my friend?
I am. I was so excited that I was gonna say a quick prayer. Can I say it right now?
Amen.
Heavenly Father, we come to you right now and we, first of all, thank you for all the blessings you've given us in our lives. We are so grateful. And we ask you right now to come into this room, be with us in spirit. Share with me the words that I need to say and how to say them. In Jesus' name, amen. Welcome to Make Contractors Great Again. This podcast exists for one reason: to protect homeowners and elevate contractors who take responsibility seriously. Every contractor you see here has been vetted before they even sit in this chair. Licenses checked, background reviewed, references verified, but there's one thing you can't vet on paper: character. So before we get info, what they do, what they sell, or how long they've been in business, I ask every contractor the same first question, no exceptions. And before we go any further, this is Jason Avery, owner of Avery Construction. He's done well over $5 million last year in remodeling. And the question is, are you a great contractor, and why or why not?
Well, I think everybody would answer that, yes, I'm great. And just like everybody likes to tell you, they've got the best customer service. But how do you verify or prove that? My company has now received over 24 awards for award-winning designs and overall outcomes. Wow. And I judge it more so based on referrals coming in. If a customer is not happy, they're not going to refer you to their neighbor. If they are happy, they will. And today, Avery Construction receives 62% of all incoming business by way of referral. We get another 13% of it by what I call indirect referral, because on social media, somebody asked the question and 15 people or more jumped in to say that we were a good, credible source for that. So with 75% of our business by referral, yeah, I feel pretty great about that.
Wow, that is great. Question number 2. Tell me about a job that didn't go as planned. What happened, and what did you do to make it right?
Chris, that's every job that doesn't go exactly as planned, but that's what separates a good contractor from a bad contractor. It's about how you're going to react and how you're going to deal with that. How are you going to communicate with the client? You know, it's easy up front when we're talking about a sale, but when it comes to a job in progress, communication breaks down, and that could be the nail in the coffin for you and the business as a whole. See, a lot of people don't clearly spell out the terms up front, or clearly set the expectation up front. What is included and what's not included? If you're very clear about that and you've made notations what the potential hazards could be and how we'll deal with it when we get there, then you can avoid a lot of those uncomfortable conversations later. But this is construction. Until I tear apart the wall, I can't see that the previous contractor hid some mistakes inside there and covered some things up. Until I remove the floor, I can't see that the substrate is not level because the house has been settling over the years. And, you know, there are things that can be surprises to people in jobs. I like to think that we are surprised by very little these days, but we've certainly drawn it out and set a clear expectation for the client about the things that are known and the things that are a little questionable.
You sound just like one of my project managers. I got to tell you, every time I'm talking to him about pricing, he always looks at me and says, I got to tear the wall down. I don't know what's behind there. We can't see through the wall, but it's a good answer. Why did you start your company in the first place? Not what you do, but why you chose this work.
You know, the road of life has forks in it, and, different choices along the way. My first business when I was 19 years old was a call center. And when I decided I was going to close the door on that, I was attracted to another company that had a call center making appointments for the field representation of sales. They were selling roofing and windows and siding and storm protection. When I arrived at that company, I realized that the people in the call center make far less than the people in the field who drive around the state and create these contracts. And I decided I wanted to try that out. 10 months of sales on the road led me into administrative management, into being a director and a vice president over a long run in my 20s. But that introduced me to construction as a whole. Now, in selling roofs, you're selling something that people need and don't necessarily want.
For sure.
And after having to speak to a few too many elderly women that were crying because of their fixed budget, couldn't afford a new roof, but they needed it, I didn't enjoy the feeling of that. Right. And I started working with a company that did kitchen and bath remodeling, and I realized that people were ecstatic about the idea of remodeling their kitchen and what it was going to become. And so it was a happier place to work in. So I worked in remodeling kitchens and baths. It was a cabinet factory kind of that had just crossed the line to the next level after bringing a general contractor to the table. Yeah, how I got here, boy, that's a long story that we don't have enough time for in this podcast. But in the short terms, life has its forks in the road.
Wow, that's an incredible journey. I remember with my wife being probably 25 years ago, we put displays up before the internet. We'd collect the lead slips out. I would take them back. She would call them at home, and I would go sell and install a job. Yeah.
For me, it started at the home shows. And I go put myself in the room with thousands of people considering projects. And I actually made a spectacle of myself. I'd stand in the middle of the aisle with my yellow hard hat and my tool belt. But my tool belt was stuffed with brochures and business cards and pens and tchotchkes that I was giving away.
That's a good idea.
And you know what? Everybody noticed me, and they had plenty of sarcastic comments for me. They called me Bob the Builder and Handy Andy or the Village Builder. People, but they all noticed me. They stopped to talk. And what I did is I made open-ended conversation. I didn't say, are you going to be doing a project? That only yields the yes or no. I said, what's your next project going to be? And they would reveal and tell me what they were working on. And if it wasn't a project for me, I found that I had the resources to help them, and I knew the other contractors they could talk to. And by making these connections, and these people would always remember who I am, the contractors on the receiving end would always remember who I am. And the people who did need my information, they did want to do a project, they probably talked to 6 other contractors that day. But when they got home, everybody's cards were laid out flat on their countertop, and I had a TP tent style card that would sit up on top of that pile. Yeah. And I didn't care if they remembered my name. There was a picture of me on it with my yellow hard hat. Yeah. And so when I would call that client later and say, hi, I'm with Avery Construction, and they'd be like, who? Hey, remember me, the guy in the yellow hard hat? The brand carried over, the message carried over, and I won so many jobs out of the home shows by default just because the other contractors never called them back or never showed up to the appointment or showed up to the appointment, told them to give them an estimate, and 3 weeks later, there's no estimate yet. So, that's how we got started.
Incredible. Once a homeowner signs a contract, what systems protect their money?
So, there's a contract that spells out every item in the scope of work.
Sure.
It's accompanied by an exhibit to the contract, which is going to be a budget that breaks it down and itemizes it piece by piece. Mm-hmm. And this is an integral part to good communication. My former employer taught me that we should write the description vague and just put a total price to it. That way, if something goes wrong, we can wiggle our way out of it. If the customer wants to make a change, we're going to give them back the cost, but we're going to charge them at the full retail, the in and out. And you know what? That might have been okay for his margins, but not for his reputation. And for me as the project manager in the field at that time, I had to deal with these uncomfortable conversations with very unruly clients who were very dissatisfied with that approach. So launching my own business, I went completely the other direction with it. We're going to break it down to the pennies. You know exactly where every dollar goes, so there's no room to argue about anything later. It's either in the budget or it's not, or there's a notation that says why it's not. Maybe we talked about this much, but you could only afford this much. That other piece might get lost in the shuffle unless we claim which date we omitted that item from the budget. So once a budget and a contract have been initiated, we only take a small 10% deposit to initiate the contract. We're going to go through the permitting phases of the project. We're going to have the next draw either set up at the start or maybe at the ordering of the next big wave of materials if we have to place cabinet orders in advance or buy granite or quartz stone slabs in advance. But then we're going to go get some more work done, and we're going to pass an inspection. Then we're going to ask for another draw. Then we're going to go through and, complete inspections, hang up drywall, get it mudded and textured, and then ask for another draw. Then we're going to paint it and put in the floors and then ask for a draw, or deliver the cabinets and then ask for a draw. So what protects the client? It's a schedule of work, and the payments are based on milestones of completion. So they get to see it progress before they hand over more money. We have stopping points should the money stop flowing, that we can discuss where we're at and where we're going. Because again, projects might change and morph as they go when we're talking projects of this size and stature. I'm not doing the air conditioner replacement for $5 to $10,000 and it's in and out in 2 days. Right. I'm doing the $100 or $200 or $300,000 complete home renovation that's going to take place over the next 6 months. By the time we go through architecture, design, the permitting process, the start and completion, and the final punch out. So protecting the client and the money, it's making sure it's clearly spelled out what's included, what's not, what could be an extra, and then it's allowing them to pay in milestones as they go, so they get to see what they're receiving for their money before they hand over more.
As you speak, I'm hearing my team who did all the vetting on you, and one of the calls that we did talk about is your contract, and it's so detailed, like you're explaining. I mean, you can walk through that with a third grade person, and when that person is finished with you, they know exactly what they're getting, and that's what we thought was very impressive.
It's interesting that you said it that way, because my mother was a kindergarten school teacher my whole life, and the first time I had to speak in front of a room full of adults, Mom said, talk to 6-year-olds. Yes. Just like we did back in class.
Exactly.
If a 6-year-old can understand it, no way anybody else is going to misunderstand that.
Yes.
You only have their attention for a few minutes at a time. People have short attention spans.
For sure.
But communication and explaining things clearly, very important. And the contract and budget that you're referring to, I already alluded to the fact that I have other businesses. One of my businesses is a coaching and consulting business where I advise other contractors how to structure their business in a way such as mine. And that budget sheet that I created, I've actually coached and mentored and furnished it to over 35 local general contractors that use my budgeting methods as a way of structuring their business.
That's great. That's a great contract. How do you communicate with homeowners during a project, especially when there's bad news?
Well, communicating the news is the most important thing. And honestly, for a staff of people that represent me, it's one of the most difficult things that I'm constantly instilling in them is that, things aren't going to go our way. And that's understood in the nature of our industry. But don't hide from it. Don't avoid the uncomfortable conversation, because if the client gets there first and then has to bring it to your attention, whether you knew about it or not, they feel like all is lost and the job is out of control and you're not doing your job to manage it. So I insist that the staff here, as soon as something bad happens, we're going to let the customer know immediately, hey, this didn't go the way we wanted it to, but we're aware of it. We're working on it. And here's our plan for going forward, what we're going to do. Let that client know and give them the confidence that we are in charge. We are taking control of it. And that's, as we said at the beginning, the difference between maybe a great contractor and not great contractor. Let's face it, in Florida especially, around the country, but in Florida especially, when I go into a room and I say, who here's heard a horror story about a contractor? Every person raises their hand. I don't believe that every one of those contractors were bad people or had bad intentions. I just believe that maybe they were a little bad at the communicating. And so they didn't set the clear expectation. When the uncomfortable conversations ensued, maybe they didn't handle it well. They didn't approach it from the go forward, piece. Here's what we'll do to make this ship right. And when that communication breaks down, that's when, it hits the fan, we'll say.
Exactly. That's great. Where do you refuse to cut corners, even if costs you time or profit?
Well, I can tell you that at any given time, my company has about 60 overall jobs.
Oh, wow.
20 of those jobs are not ready to go yet. We're still working on the plans and the permitting process. 20 of those jobs we've all but wrapped up. There's maybe a punch out item or two to address, and we're waiting on a part to be coming in, or we're waiting for a final inspection, just doing the final collection. But those 20 in the middle, the active jobs that we're working in, day out, and getting things done, out of 20, I'm probably losing money on about 3 of those right now. 17 others that are going the way as planned are going to make this a viable business that I can survive on with, having a profit margin. But I expect at any given time that I'm not winning on every job. And those 3 that I take the bath on, that I have to eat the charges, and it's part of the nature of the business. But if I was a contractor that only had 1 or 2 projects going, and one of those went bad, that's a third of my overall profit and revenue. Yes. It could very well put me belly up and out of business. It's the safety in the numbers dealing with a larger contractor that if something goes bad on a few of them, it doesn't put me out. Yes. And I'm going to make sure that no matter what that cost is that I'm losing, I'm protecting the reputation of the business and standing behind the quality that I know we deliver. And I know we deliver that quality because we've got 24 trophies to prove it, that we do award-winning designs. So again, it's never fun to lose money on anything, but it is the nature of the business sometimes that it will happen that way. We try to structure a budget where out of $100 out the door, $67 was directly labor and material charges we had to pay for. $13 was the cost of supervision and all the layers from permitting to design to management. We've got $20 that comes into the business, but $15 has to pay all the rest of those bills. General liability insurance is not cheap for construction. And there's only $5 left for the business when it's all said and done for the company at the bottom line. So these are not big margins. These are tight windows. And we have to schedule accordingly and be very accurate about budgeting to make sure that we don't miss that mark. Now, within any one of those budgets, I do add a few points of what I call the punch-out budget. That's the attitude adjustment fund. Because on any given day, the crew in the field might not like the structure of payment I have set up for them. They might think, you said it would take 2 days and it took every bit of 3 days. Well, why did it take 3 days? If it's a reasonable explanation that was just beyond our foresight, I'm going to make sure that crew's compensated fairly, because if I don't, they're going to moan all week long. They're going to be not productive all week long. It's going to be more costly than that. I have to keep them on track and keep that crew happy. Sometimes a client's going to approach me with this extra that came up I don't like. I feel like you should have known about it. Exactly. And so I'm going to take it from a real perspective and think about, should my designer have known about that, or was it impossible to know about that? But there's times where I have to eat a little something just to change the customer's attitude, keep them happy, because if they don't like me anymore, it's going to be a miserable 2 weeks or 2 months to get to the finish line. And so it's, you have to budget accordingly. You have to prepare for the unexpected. You have to make sure you have a plan for how to deal with the unexpected when it occurs. But everybody has to walk away without feeling like they got hurt. And compromise is the key to everything. I can't give away the farm because I just don't have the budget to do it, but I can't, hold my high and mighty approach to it to where I think I'm going to get every penny that I feel I deserve, because the dissatisfied customer is no good to me. I want the customer to refer me the next 3 customers.
And that answer just took me down memory lane. As you well know, I'm retiring from contracting, right, after many, many years. And one of my last projects, it was exactly this. We pulled a bathtub, a tub to shower conversion. We pulled a standard tub out, and when we put the shower base in, the customer, when we were all finished, got in the shower, and because we lose 3.5 inches for the curb, right? So in the shower base, the customer couldn't really shower because it was such a tight fit with the doors. And she came to me and she said, you guys should have known this, told me. And just like what you said, you got to compromise. And that's what we did.
So we talked about, we have a contract that has a scope of work exhibit. We have a budget that has line item numbers exhibit. And then we have a plan, which is a visual demonstration of what we're going to provide as an exhibit. And so details like that, we try to capture up front, note them in there, and everything is going to be signed off to the point that we've completed this conversation, reviewed it with the client. So again, avoid those uncomfortable conversations later by communicating better, more thorough, more accurately up front. And, as it translates to price, sometimes somebody might look at my budget compared to the other contractor and say, oh, it seems like he's more expensive. And then I'm going to challenge you. Am I really? Or did he only tell you about 85% of the story, the only 85% that he can recognize, and he hasn't maybe done enough volume to recognize the 15% he's going to run into, but he's just going to charge that back to you along the way and say, oh, that was unforeseen. That's not in the contract. We didn't talk about it. You got to pay extra. Do you want that experience where you find out as you go what the budget is, or do you want to know what the budget is right now up front because we can predict it? We've been there before.
Wow. That's very good, Jason. Very good. So, who is allowed to work in a customer's home under your name, and how do you vet them?
So, everybody that is an employee of the business is able to be qualified under the business's general contracting license. Now, where you get into trouble with some contractors is they bring people in and they put them on a 1099. And what they're trying to do there is avoid employer taxes.
Of course.
And you know what? Why don't you budget correctly and be able to afford the taxes so that you can have people on the appropriate workers' comp insurance, et cetera, et cetera. Workers' comp, a 1099, only the owner of the company can be waived from work comp. They can provide you with a certificate that says, I waive my work comp rights, and so that's okay. Only up to 3 people in an organization can be waived at a max, but the others must be listed as directors of the company on Sunbiz, the Florida registration site for all licensing. So if this guy shows up with his 2 helpers, do I believe those helpers are directors of his company? Heck no. I'm going to go look it up and prove no, that's not the case. Sure. So we'll come up with scenarios where this licensed, and he's got a corporation, and he's got general liability insurance. This owner, if he wants to be independent and he wants to work on a waiver because he can make a few extra bucks waiving off the taxes, employer taxes, and insurance on him, in order to work with my organization, those helpers still have to come into my payroll. So I can guarantee that they are covered under work comp. Because it only takes one guy, accident, cuts his finger off on a chop saw, and that lawsuit could, again, bankrupt and put the company out of business. So, if you want to run a reputable organization, you got to make sure you do things right. The vetting process and such, I work with an organization called Frank Crum, which is called a PEO. PEO is basically employee leasing. Frank Crum is an HR giant. A giant. And they've got all the work comp coverage built into the payroll system, and I have to pay them a little premium on doing that service in the beginning. But in the beginning, with no volume and no track record, no history, I was a risky bet for them. So in the beginning, I probably paid a higher percentage above the state average for the work comp to get the coverage I needed. But now as the years have gone on, 14 years later, and I'm one of the probably top 5 clients in that organization in terms of large payroll, over the years, they have dropped my rate, subsidizing mine against those small guys that are just getting started. And I currently pay under the state average for work comp, but to have all the appropriate coverage and to make sure everybody's, on the up and up. So because what's going to happen if somebody cuts their finger off on the saw? And first, the lawyer is going to try to sue his direct supervisor that brought him to the table. But then if he's 1099, he's going to say, no, we can show and prove according to tax law that, no, he's an employee. And then when the employer on his side didn't have any deep pockets, they're going to look for the next one. So they're going to come after my deep pockets, or they're going to come after the homeowner's deep pockets. They're going to sue homeowner insurance, my insurance. Everybody's going to get sued. If they neglect to sue one of them, the lawyer's not doing his job. So this is all stuff homeowners need to be mindful of when you hire the wrong guy and maybe he's not following the right structural rules. And, this could lead to big problems and big trouble or a big lawsuit and a lot of money. So Frank Crum, the HR giant, goes through the vetting process. I tell them who I want to hire. They approve them to be hired, and then they lease them back to me. And if should there ever be a claim, somebody tweaked his back, I give them a call, and they take care of everything, medical care, whatever that person needs. They interview me once to find out what the my view of the situation was, and then they'll let me know later if I need to offer him an interim job sweeping my office floor until he's recovered enough to go back to the regular job. But it's all about having the right support network. I'm not going to pretend to be able to do anything and everything myself, but I'm going to bring the experts to the table that make sure we get things done.
As you know, Contractors Great Again, I have put together an attorney general platform inside this company, which has an attorney general for the whole company, and then each individual state has its own attorney general in this company, and to prevent exactly or to help out exactly with what you were talking about there. And that's great. I'm sure a lot of people that are going to be watching this learned a lot from what you just said. Thank you for saying that. And thank you for doing that, because I've met a lot of contractors in my day, and I have not heard that process like what you just described. So my hat's off to you.
Actually, on the front page of my website, there is a video created by Frank Crum as they came in and interviewed me at the table, just like this, like we're doing now.
That's great.
To show off what their service offers, which is absolutely a fantastic service.
That's great. How do you explain pricing so homeowners understand what they're paying for and what they're not paying for?
So we've already alluded to this budget breakdown.
We did.
And part of that breakdown is to make it more understandable. If I just lump things together and tell you that I'm charging you $5,000 for the demolition and disposal on this job, knee-jerk reaction for most people like, oh, that seems like a lot of money. Why are you charging so much? So if I break it down and say, well, I've got $450 of labor and material to put up plastic walls, paper coverings, ram boards over your hardwood so that it doesn't get destroyed. And then I've got another $800 for 2 switch outs of a dumpster. And then I've got now only this little bit in between, which is the actual demolition, 3,500, whatever my math was there. It makes it much easier for the client to absorb and understand. I got to educate the client on where the $5,000 came from. And I can offer, if you want to cut back the price, I don't have to put up the plastic walls. I can let the dust fly. That's okay with you. Most people choose to leave it in there. I can offer to take out the dumpsters if you want to be responsible for hauling the trash over to the dump. I don't have to charge you for that. Most people will decide to leave it in there. And then, hey, that $3,500 in the middle, I can't let you take down the load-bearing wall, but if you want to rip out the tiles and the drywall and you want to rip out the cabinets and do all that labor yourself, I can take this $3,500 and maybe drop it down to $2,000 or $1,500 for you. Yeah. They say, I don't want to spend 3 weekends extending my project timeline and bloodying my knuckles and taking me away from my day job. So again, it's being able to explain in a way that somebody can understand. They don't do this every day.
No.
It's confusing.
No. It's what you described.
I got to teach them in such a way and document it in such a way that now we can reference back to that documented in time and say, here's exactly what we discussed piece by piece.
And what you just described, we call the total offer concept. And you lay out this whole concept of everything. And then at the end, when the price is this, and somebody wants to maybe reduce that price, we just go back through and do you want to take this out? Do you want to take this out? We can bring this number down. Just what you said exactly. I like it, Jason. All right, Jason, what red flags should homeowners watch for when hiring a contractor, even if it means they don't hire them?
Sure. Well, if he pulls up in a truck in your driveway that's leaking oil over your pavers, that might be a red flag. Exactly. If he tells you he's going to give you an estimate and it's going to be a week or 2 or more, or if he has to have other people visit the job site before he can give you an estimate, that might be a red flag. Why doesn't he know what it costs? If this person is not listed on Sunbiz, and you can check with the Department of Business and Professional Regulation on a license stature, if he doesn't have an active license, that's a red flag. You might need to look at what kind of license, depending on the scope of work. And there's a residential contractor, can only work in the residential home, no commercial. There's the building contractor. You do some of the commercial, but there's limitations. And then there's the CGC, commercial general contractor, high-rise buildings, big and bad, anything you want. So what level of contractor based on what level of project you have. You need to find the good pairing. But then also understand that there's no one general contractor that can necessarily be the be-all. I have to list a plumbing subcontractor on the permit with his license number to accompany our license number. I have to list the electrical subcontractor. I have to list the HVAC subcontractor. Florida recognizes about 40 different types of specific trades licenses. And if there's a license there for it, I'm going to have to list it as working with me on this project. We can't just go do it by ourselves. But the general contractor can bundle this stuff so the client and consumer has one person to talk to, point the finger at, and write checks to. Sometimes you can do just one trade only at a house. If you're doing just plumbing, no problem. Or you can do just electric, no problem. But at any given time, when you now have plumbing and electric together on the same project, 82 trades on the same project, you now have to add the general contractor over the top of that to put these together for the sake of the building departments.
Yes. So that's great. And that's a lot of information there for the general public, because they don't know that. So after the job is done, it's paid for. What responsibility do you still have to the homeowner?
Well, within a couple of weeks after that job ends, the first thing we do is we go back out and visit the home. And now the original designer who helped them get the project started, the guy, they haven't seen him in a while as they've been through the production now. And but they return to the home. Some people think you're never going to see the original salesman again, right? No. So we go back out to visit. They're going to catalog pictures for us that are now, worthy of the portfolio after the client's had a chance to kind of clean up and move back in and put things where they go, hang the pictures back on the wall. And we usually surprise them with a little gift along the way, maybe a little bit of a bribe towards our great testimonial that we want to capture, our 5-star review we want to capture, but also to find out when the dinner party's planned and the guests are coming over. Maybe we'll buy the steaks too, to promote what could happen next, because people get ideas when they see, what the Joneses are doing, right? Everybody keeps up with the Joneses.
Of course.
But otherwise, responsibility, the state of Florida requires any contractor to guarantee and warranty their work for a year, and we comply with that order. What would go beyond a year of needing to be warranted? Well, that would be any of the products that were installed. So at Avery Construction, we actually separated from the beginning. We provide you with the quotes in the contract for all of the labor, along with all of the raw materials. That would be sheets of 2x4s or drywall or adhesives to glue down your tile, things of that nature. We have a separate list that we allow the consumer to go shopping for and provide us with these materials. So if you got to pick out the color, I can't supply it to you until you've picked one out. And there's 10 different stores you might visit to pick it out. And, so we don't get involved in that part of the process. And we don't try to make money on every piece and part. Here, this is what you can bring to the table outside of our financials. We don't have to have any overhead charges or delivery charges or management charges, because someone's got to deal with it. So the client will go out shopping. They're going to provide us with tile and sinks and faucets and toilets and things of that nature that will be delivered to the house that we're going to be able to work with. And each of those products should come with a product warranty direct from the manufacturer. Since the client purchases direct, they own the direct warranty from the manufacturer. If the part becomes a problem, they can pursue that warranty angle, and they can certainly lean on us to help them resolve the problem. If it was just a plumbing item, I'm going to refer them to my plumber and let them deal with that guy direct. For the electrical item, direct to the electrician. Building stuff, of course, we'll get involved. But the idea is, the items we put in, they're either put in right or put in wrong, and you're going to know within the first year what that was. So that's how we handle it. Now, as long as I'm ever in business, if there's a client that called me back and they've got a problem, we're going to help them address that problem.
Sure.
And whether we pay for it or they pay for it depends on what's the nature of, what happened, how quickly it happened afterwards. I've had clients who get nice, fancy stained cabinetry, and then they allow their kids to do dishes and slop water all over them, and it tears apart the finishes. Obviously we can't warranty such things like that. But, if a drawer slide stopped working, we're going to provide you with some new drawer slides, no problem. No. So case by case, but and take care of people if you want to. Reputation's everything.
Jason, that's an excellent answer. Excellent. If a homeowner is unhappy, what is your internal process to resolve it before it becomes a dispute?
So There's layers of compromise, is the way I look at it. You have a crew who's assigned to the job, and they're the ones moving it and shaking it and making things happen. And sometimes, the client, whether they're upset or just confused or misunderstood about something and the way that process is going, we now have a project manager who's going to come into that environment every 2 to 3 working days and going to be the center point of communication for that client. So they don't have to feel uncomfortable talking to the crew that's showing up every day in their house. They can express that concern to the project manager. If there's something that needs to be compromised, the project manager is going to work on that compromise and get that done. Maybe reach out to his direct supervisor for, help or information. If we can't get the compromise settled at this point, now the production manager, his supervisor, steps in and he's going to review that situation and he's going to see what's been done so far, see what else we could possibly do for compromise. Maybe he's going to call me and reach out for some advice on what we could do, and then he's going to try to compromise. If they can't get it done between, those 3 layers of the team, that's where I'm going to come in and see what we can do about the situation. I know what we've already tried, what wasn't acceptable, and, I can bring any other option to the table. But I'm going to take that and do a Zoom or a meeting where it includes all the parties involved. I want the client, I want the production manager, I want the project manager, I want the CFO, I want the designer, and myself. And all of us together, are going to come up with what's the appropriate way to handle this. Again, I'm not trying to win a home run on any one job. I just want them to be successful. I want the client to say that we did the best we could with whatever we were faced with and that we never gave up. And, we did what it took. So until you open up those channels of communication, you're willing to, take in the bad to get to the good. Here's a good analogy. When you go eat at Applebee's, the manager walks by the table and he goes, "Everything okay here tonight?" And he hardly misses a step as he keeps on walking, right?
Yes.
He doesn't really want to know what you have to say. He doesn't want to hear that negative.
He doesn't.
If he truly wanted to be the best Applebee's store in the entire land and he'd be the best manager of the best store, he would have approached that table and said, "What could we have done better here this evening?"
That's the truth.
Ask the hard question that you don't like the answer to, but whether you like it or not, it's what you need to hear if you're going to address it. And maybe you did everything right, and maybe the client got the wrong impression of it, but that impression is still a real thing, and how are we going to not allow others to get the wrong impression? What steps can be made to prevent that?
Of course. Wow. Yes, Jason, that's, I was just at Applebee's the other day, and that manager did come out. He did say that, and he seems to always come out when you're in the middle of a big conversation.
Yeah, while you're chewing on your food, you can't say anything,
your
right?
Your mouth is full, and so, but you're exactly right. He did not say what you said. Wow. That's great, Jason. So let's see, where are we at? Have you ever walked away from a job because it wasn't right for the homeowner? Why?
We walk away from jobs all the time. I'm not after a job's been committed to or started, but before they start.
That's what this is.
I try to mentor and coach other business owners on this all the time about narrowing your target in your lane. I'm not trying to be everything to everybody. So if somebody were to contact me and say, "I need some new lighting and flooring in my dining room," it would be overkill to include the general contractor in this process. Let me get you connected with a great electrician for the lighting and a great flooring installer for the flooring. And I'll even show you a supply place where you can go to. Just tell them you're working with me and you can take advantage of my contractor discount on the material. And I'm going to just help those people have a good experience. If it's an investor, my business is not geared towards putting lipstick on pigs, so that's not really a project that's for us. But there's some contractors who really need or want that work. If it's a insurance settlement, that's not appealing to me. There's going to be a whole lot of layers of paperwork. I want one estimate that I can go lie to them about, and I want one estimate what you're going to cut corners for, and then we got to do 14 variations. It's just going to be very time consuming, and that's not a project I'm seeking. Finance. There's programs called 203K. You can roll in some repairs along with the purchase of the home, and it's a lot more paperwork, third-party inspectors involved. This is not a project that's appealing to me, but there's plenty of contractors that want it. So I take in phone calls for lots of projects, and then I sort them out. I don't ever tell somebody calling me, "No, can't help you," because that is the absolute end to my relationship, and nothing positive can come of it. I say I'm not the right fit for this project. I think it's overkill to have us involved. I probably have to charge more money than it's necessary. And I think there's a better value to you if I connect you with this person who's in your area, who focuses on these things daily. And so I'm going to make a connection. And that way the person who called me had a great experience. Wow, he was so nice. He helped me find what I need. And they might tell somebody else that story, and I might find future business. To the contractor on the receiving end that I've talked up and recommended and passed a referral to, I've motivated that contractor to consider throwing it back my direction. I'm friends with many of the GCs in town. I know that we overlap. That's okay, because they get phone calls for jobs over here that I'd prefer to have, and I get phone calls for jobs over here they prefer to have. If we just sort them out and put the right guy with the right job, there's enough work for all of us. So we probably interview 400 to 500 project opportunities a year, and we're going to contract 80 to 100 of those. But many of them were passed off to the right person to begin with, so that everybody had a good experience. And again, I stay in my lane. I'm not trying to build the new house. I'm not trying to build the commercial building. I tear them apart. I put them back together. I improve or enhance them or add on to them along the way. That is my lane. I know there's a minimum job that I won't go below. I know that there's a maximum job that I don't want. And you would think, why wouldn't you want the biggest job you could ever take? Because remember when I said about balance, 20 jobs going, 3 of them losing money, 17 of them are on track? Well, what if I throw that big egg in the basket that outweighs all the other eggs, and then all of a sudden that's the one that goes bad? That could be the one that turns everything upside down.
Yes.
So I like the safety and the diversity of the multitude of projects that are all equally proportionate to each other within a range. I don't need the pie in the sky. I'm not trying to win the home run. Let's let somebody who's more suited for that take it, and we stay in the lane that we're good at. There's a mentor of mine, a Dr. Ivan Meisner, who made a statement that has resonated forever. Jason, don't do 1,000 things 6 times. Do 6 things 1,000 times. Makes you very efficient, an expert at it. That's what I'm trying to be, is the expert of the industry in this space that I live in, award-winning remodeling.
Of course. That's a great answer. Last question. When your company's name is on the truck and a home is on the line, what personal standard do you hold yourself to?
Interesting question. So, it's my actual last name is the name of the business. So it's pretty important to me that my reputation in this town is protected. I make sure that all the teams have the signage on the trucks. I make sure they all wear the shirts, wear the hats. They're representing the brand, so people know. We got signs in the yards. It's very identifiable. The people that associate with my team. As I have a team of people that I disseminate the work to. We delegate and we follow up. There's a process for all of it, checks and balances, double checks in some cases. But I'm more represented in the community by the board of the Chamber of Commerce, by the president of the major networking organization in town. I've held these leadership roles where other business owners are looking up to me. So again, doing what it takes, making sure people are compromised with, making sure nobody walks away from the negotiation feeling hurt. And it's more of an overall philosophy. It's an overall culture, a way of life. Maybe the best way to describe it is, in my team, I have done many exercises or trainings with them, bringing in outside professionals, and we decided on the core values of my business. Not that I dictated to them that these are my business core values, but that as a team, we each identified our own personal core values. Then we thought, what of our core values is something that applies to what we do every day? And then we figured out which things kind of meant the same, they overlapped, and we narrowed a page of 50 possible core values into 3. And we gave it an acronym. So the core values of Avery Construction is the acronym PI. Performance, integrity, and empowerment. The performance means to me that I don't need to be the best, the 100% perfect person. That's impossible in this industry. I just need to be really damn good and better than most of them that do it. And I need to do it fair and accurate and, perform. I need to deliver a high quality product at a reasonable price. It doesn't have to be the cheapest price. It has to be accurate and fair for, what you're getting. There's guys that install stuff for $1 a foot. There's better guys that install it for $3 a foot. There's the experts that install it for $6 a foot. What do you need for your expected outcome? What's going to, be the right expectation, and what level should we pay at to get you there? Integrity. Be honest, be true. And I don't have anything to hide. Yes, things don't always go my way. Yes, things do surprise me still, not very often, but they do. But let's be real. Let's just have a discussion with like a couple of adults. I start a relationship with a client telling them that my goal is, when this is all said and done, I want you to come out on the boat with me. I want you to go play a round of golf with me. I want to be your friend. I want to be invited to the dinner party. And that's the relationship I want with a client when I'm done. And so if things are wonky along the way, it's not going to happen. And certainly by being shady or trying any kind of tomfoolery or trickery or whatever you want to call it, that integrity is where it's at. Just be authentic,
Yes. I'm
not necessarily polished around all the edges, but people understand that I am who I am. I'm authentic, and you can trust every damn word that comes out of my mouth. Don't have any reason to hide from things. Empowerment. That's empowering my client to make an educated decision by giving them all the details and the information they need, whether they want it or not. Do they want to pay the cheaper install or the more expensive install? How do they make that decision if you don't explain the difference? It's empowering my teams. And when some employers pay their workers hourly, they get the clock milked. And even if the crew didn't do it on purpose, maybe the materials were late being delivered and the crew's sitting on buckets. The clock is getting milked. That breeds inefficiency. That inflates costs. Things get out of control that way. So never found that to be a solid method. When you pay people salary, now they're going to get milked to death because the employer wants to jam as much stuff. I need that deadline done by Saturday, so you have to come in and work this weekend. You're going to jam too much into the salary. The people are not going to be happy. You're going to turn those people over. Now you got to find new people. So you start with inefficiency in between. You start with inefficiency while you're training. You start with repeating old mistakes that we already learned not to do. And so it's not good either way. I've formulated my business in a way of piecework. And here's a budget based on how many pieces. If I had to take you with me and we had to go do that for that payout on those pieces, we would think that task was worth us going to accomplish. I don't want them to feel it's not, or they're not going to work for me. Got to pay fair. I'm not trying to pay cheap. I'm trying to pay average to above average, but fair. Now, if you can go do the work in half the time because you bought a fancier tool, I still pay you for the full amount.
Of course.
And if you prefer to start a little later, leave a little earlier, take a long lunch, maybe you take a couple cigarette breaks between the day, you're obviously not as efficient as the guy who works straight through, but I don't have to argue with you. I don't have to crack the whip. I don't have to, demand more out of you because you're getting paid for what you got accomplished. A production level payout, a piecework payout, an incentive-based percentage payout is the only fair way and best way to structure a business if you want that business to grow and you want to retain the people within it and not turn them over. So from the guys in the field that do the pieces to the managers who have a small percentage override on the work that they're doing, to the designers that have a small percentage override on the what they're designing, everybody is incentivized to make sure that everything flows smoothly, goes perfect. There's no advantage to us to drag a project along or let it go out. But the faster we get them in the ground, we can either take time off and enjoy it with our families, or we can go take more work and get to the next level financially. But there's no ceilings. I don't turn people over. I got people that have been with me for 10 years plus.
Nice.
I got two guys that have been here since the very beginning. The bookkeeper is the full-time CFO for this business and 5 other businesses. And the general contractor qualifier from the beginning now has a second general contractor qualifier, but he handles the commercial department. They're all still here. When you keep people and retain people over a long period of time, repetition, high volume makes these people the absolute experts of it. They've done it 1,000,000 times before. Do 6 things 1,000 times.
I like that.
That's the idea.
The whole time you were talking, I just kept hearing my mother. My mother used to say, Chris, treat other people like you want to be treated.
It's the golden
Over
rule.
and over again, she drilled that into me. And that's what I tried to live by most of my career. And Jason, it sounds like you hit that.
Well, I love
Right
the
on.
golden rule. I was raised that way too. In my consulting these days, I've actually started teaching people the platinum rule instead. I'm not going to treat you the way that I want to be treated. I'm going to treat you the way that you want to be treated.
Oh,
And it's the next level of that. And we can talk about that on another podcast on another
sure
day.
can.
But I'll leave you with my mother's comment, which was, as the kindergarten school teacher, Jason, if you want to be the janitor, I will support you. But you make sure you're the janitor that gets the award for the cleanest rooms in the county.
Ain't that,
Yep.
ain't that great? Well, Jason, I got to say this. You know, the reason I put together this community is to attract and bring contractors inside of a gated community where they were vetted on the way in. And when they got inside, they treated other people like they wanted to be treated, just like we were talking about. And I have to say this, for the first contractor in making contractors great again in this community, I feel so blessed to have you on board. I hope that you stay in this community for as long as you live your career out. And thank you so much for the time. I got to tell you that even though I'm at the end of my career, I wish I'd have met you maybe a few years back because you taught me a lot. And I feel really blessed to have you in this community as the first contractor in making contractors great
Number one,
again.
baby. Number one. All right.
One. Thank you for your time.
Well, I'm glad that I can be the example and hopefully the role model to some of your future contractors coming in. I'd like to help you,
will.
educate some of these guys maybe
Sure,
on how
sure.
to make contractors great again. Simple things that we can do to make a better experience for those involved. And I think this is such a great idea with this community to bring the consumer to the people that they can trust. And again, find the right person for the right job. That's all it takes.
Thank you very much for your time.